started, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Greg Gilligan. I'm the Communications Director here at RVA757 Connects. Welcome on this day after Labor Day, the official start of the fall, but it's not really fall yet. Anyway, we have an exciting program to talk about today about the growing digital infrastructure taking place here in Virginia. First off, I want to let everyone know that unfortunately about an hour ago, one of our speakers, Stephen Billies from QTS, informed us that he couldn't make it today for this webinar. So Anthony Romanella, who was our other speaker, is going to pick up the slack. And as they say in show business, the show will go on. Let me quickly go over our agenda today. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors, Town Bank. I'll give you an update on what's happening at RVA757 Connects. We'll get into the topic of the day, and we'll leave room for questions and answers, and then we'll have some time at the very end to let you know about what's happening next at RVA757 Connects. Just two important notes here. I want to let you know that this is being recorded. Laura Robidoux, who's my colleague here at RVA757 Connects, is recording this. And also, if you have any questions, please use the chat function, and we'll try to use those questions during the program. RVA757 Connects is a nonprofit organization, so we rely on donations for our funding. One of our corporate sponsors is Town Bank, which is based in Hampton Roads region. It operates more than 40 banking offices throughout Virginia, in Hampton Roads and Central Virginia, as well as in parts of North Carolina. Thanks today for Town Bank for sponsoring this virtual innovation spotlight. We're going to hear from Dennis Diaz. Dennis is the Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Town Bank. He's responsible for developing the company's information strategic plans and business goals. He oversees technology platforms, digital transformation, data analysis, technology, risk, information security, and business continuity. He's been in the information technology professional field and financial services for more than 30 years, serving in various leadership roles, positions at various banks. He received his bachelor's degree in computer science from Florida International University in 1990, and as a graduate of the School of Bank Management from the University of Virginia in 2014. So let me let Dennis talk here. And Dennis, are you there? Go ahead and talk.
Good afternoon, everyone. Greg, thanks for the introduction, and very much thankful for the organization RVA757 for the invitation, allowing me to speak here today. Very happy to see QTS, although they couldn't make it. Very happy to see them on the agenda. They're a dear friend of mine from a long time ago, actually. We go back to 2008, I think, in our relationship. So very good to see them grow and mature in this space, very important space. So at Town Bank, as Greg mentioned, I oversee technology, information security, and business continuity, which is where QTS really comes into play. We've had a great transformation over the last 5-6 years, even through the COVID and what's called the PPP, Payroll Protection Program, by the government, which essentially allowed us the opportunity to move forward at a very rapid pace. Some of our more innovative ideas relative to cloud, relative to digital transformation, relative to the mobility of our workforce. So all those things have been near dear to my heart over the last 5-6 years. I joined the bank in 2016, and ever since I've been working on transforming the organization towards a more robust, resilient platform that allows us to, again, bank our customers from anywhere on their terms. So specifically speaking, we've, as Greg said, we operate in Virginia and North Carolina, but also our mortgage and insurance operations, which are relatively, good sized. We operate from Pennsylvania all the way to Florida, and on the insurance side, in many ways, we operate nationwide. So most of our strategies relative to innovation really cover the gamut of what we're trying to do as a company in terms of financial services. So we call ourselves a full financial services organization. and all our technology innovation type strategies have to fit that bigger picture, if you will. So it's not just a bank. It's really more of a financial services organization across the region. Specifically, what we've worked on very diligently is, again, the cloud transformation. So we're essentially now a cloud-based company, and with that comes a lot of information security requirements that are also required if you're going to be in the cloud or anywhere near cloud or mobility type strategies. So we have consistently invested in both of those strategies almost equally to make sure there's a balance between innovation and information security. And so with cloud comes the digital transformation. We've done a lot of work on removing paper from the equation, for example, streamlining our workflows to be more digital, make sure everything's as streamlined as possible. At the same time, we're very conscious of the expense factor, right? So everything we've done has had a very acute view on expense and effectiveness, right? So I told my boss when he hired me, I can't spend you out of business. So everything we've done has been very cautious of that. And the good news is nowadays there's a lot of opportunities to innovate and to progress things forward without really, spending a ton of money, right? Relatively speaking. But so we've been working on that. We've got a great team here at Town Bank. Many professionals in my team and throughout the business, really. And I think together and collectively, we've done a good job in progressing our company forward. And what I say to my management team is, I have my 2025, 2030 hat on, and we're diligently working on making sure we understand what do we want to look like in 2030. What do we want to arrive at 2030 in terms of capabilities with? So we don't always use the expression, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So we're trying to invest diligently in our 2030 strategy. What do we want to look like? What capabilities do we want to have by the time we get there to remain competitive? Our competitors in this space are really the bigger banks. So we have to be smart about how we innovate so we can stay competitive in our marketplace. But we're a customer-centric we call them member-centric company. The member is always first. It's always going to be a relationship-based way of doing business, with technology and innovation adding an augmentation on that to make it basically just streamlined, better, more efficient, more productive for both the bankers and, more importantly, the members. Ultimately, the shareholder is the winner overall, but at the end of the day, we aim to provide a very warm level of service with our members. So that's in big terms what I could say about Town Bank. And again, thank you for the opportunity to let me be in this meeting today, and happy to take any questions if there's any at this point.
Great, Dennis, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you being able to do that for us. That was a great overview of what's happening, and you're right about planning for the future. The 2030 is not that far away when you think about it and stuff. So good. Now let's see here. Let's go back to. All right. Well, let me give you a quick update on what's happening with RVA757 Connects, everyone. As RVA757 Connects is an organization that's bringing the power of convening, connecting, and collaborating to the mega region from the Richmond area down to Hampton Roads to ensure the future economic growth and prosperity for everyone in what we call the I-64 Innovation Corridor. You can see we're pursuing several different priorities this year. And one of our priorities is to make the Richmond to Hampton Roads mega region the next global internet hub. But we need to have a strategic plan for that. The I-64 corridor has many various digital assets that are needed to become a global internet hub. Coming ashore in Virginia Beach are 3 subsea cables connecting the United States to Spain, France, Puerto Rico, and Brazil. And these cables are the 3 of the most modern and highest capacity routes in the world. A 4th cable is under development and will be the first and only one to connect the United States with South Africa. These deep sea cables connect in Henrico County, where Meta, which is the Facebook parent company, is investing about $2 billion in a 2 million square foot data center campus. The first phase of that data center campus, opened back in 2020. Next door is the 1.4 square million foot QTS Richmond Network Access Point, which is the world's 4th largest data center. And QTS is underway to double the size of that facility. Anthony will talk about that in a little bit later. The Global Internet Hub Initiative was one of the findings from the I-64 Innovation Corridor Opportunity Study that was conducted last year that was funded in part from a Go Virginia grant. Thanks again to Go Virginia for sponsoring that. Full report, if you'd like to see it, is available on our website, RVA757 Connects. Please check it out when you have an opportunity. The planning process has started for the Global Internet Hub process. We've established a strategic planning process that will take the rest of this year to complete, and we have conducted a comprehensive situation review and are identifying strategic action plans. The plan is to hire top international consultants to help formulate key action plans and to bring it all together in a comprehensive implementation plan later this year, beginning of next year. We've held 2 steering committee meetings. The last one, as you can see here, was in late August in person in Williamsburg, where we had more than 40 people attending. It was the second of 6 meetings this year to help provide an informed perspective to review documents and research findings and to begin to formulate a strategy. The steering committee members are from companies like Bank of America and CarMax, from digital infrastructure firms such as Meta and the Pixel Factory, and subsea cable operators and owners, and broadband firms and cyber companies, as well as those representing utilities, planning agencies, chambers, economic development, and the military. The Strategic Planning Initiative received a $100,000 grant from Go Virginia Region 4 and Region 5. Region 4 is from the Richmond area, Region 5 being Hampton Roads. Additional planning funds came from Dominion Energy, Henrico County, Virginia Beach, the Hampton Roads Alliance, Old Dominion University, and Dragonfly Group. We've created a project website to help the committee members keep up with the project, but also the website is a resource repository for anyone to follow our progress and to see our research findings. Please check out www.globalinternethub.org and find out more information about what we're doing. All of this Global Internet Hub talk brings us to today's webinar on how the digital infrastructure in the I-64 Innovation Corridor mega region continues to expand. QTS, which acquired a former semiconductor plant in eastern Henrico County in 2010, turned it into a mega data center. And now it's expanding its operations. QTS announced in July that it acquired an additional 200 acres next to its existing facility, and now is in the process of more than doubling that Henrico campus with 1.5 million square feet of space. The QTS data center in Henrico County's White Oak Technology Park is a vital part of the global digital connectivity. The facility provides access to more than 20 network providers and connects 3 subcontinental subsea cables that converge with fiber optics to create the Richmond Network Access Point. This is, as I mentioned, is the world's 4th largest data center. Billions of dollars are being invested in the digital infrastructure along the I-64 Innovation Corridor. Why is it happening? What's the growth? Why is it? Who's driving this growth? Oh, we turn to our speaker, Anthony Romanella, from Henrico County. He's the executive director of the Henrico County Economic Development Authority, to provide us with some details and information about what's going on in the I-64 here in Henrico County, dealing with the infrastructure. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please use the chat function, and we will use that as in terms of asking Anthony questions. Anthony, I'm going to let you now take it over.
Thanks. Thanks, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. And Laura, the PowerPoint's up, just double checking. Can see it. Good.
Thank
Good.
you.
Well, I want to start off by thanking Greg, of course, and Laura and John Martin for their leadership with RVA757 and everything that you all are doing for our region. And thank you for the opportunity today. Really always appreciate the chance to tell our story. And I'll try to mention a few specifics that maybe Greg didn't cover in his overview to cover the full picture of our friends at QTS. Also, I should also mention that my colleague Vinay Nagpal, who's with Interglobix, he's on the steering committee. He's on the webinar today. A lot of these are his slides, which I'm borrowing shamelessly today. So thank you, Vinay, for that. Vinay is in Singapore, where it is 12:17 a.m. and couldn't find anything better to do than to watch me on this webinar. So that is dedication. So that's impressive. Thank you, Vinay. Bottom line to what we're going to talk about today. You've probably heard John Martin say this before, but the digital infrastructure in the RVA 757 region is to Virginia's 21st century what I-64 and I-95 were to Virginia's 20th century. It's that important. So let's talk a little bit about what all this means, and from a macro level in terms of a data-driven world. Each day, 2.5 quintillion bytes, that's a number followed by a ton of zeros, bytes of data are created. To give this a little bit more, something maybe a little bit more relatable, is the average laptop today is about 1 terabyte, as a 1 terabyte hard drive. I saw that with the new iPhone that's going to be announced this week, you can now get a terabyte of data on your iPhone. About 70 terabytes of data are generated per minute worldwide. This is all part of the Internet of Things. This is because so many of our devices now have connections to the internet. If you think about the number of devices just in your home that are connected to the internet, spent some time a couple of months ago with Ivo Ivanov, who's the CEO of DKIX, the commercial internet exchange that we're going to talk about a little bit later. And he mentioned that in a typical new car, only about 30% of the data generated from that car has anything to do with the vehicle itself. 70% of the data generated from that car is the passengers and what we're looking at our phones and what we're doing as we are riding along. And we have every reason to believe that this will continue to grow to about 50 billion connected devices by the end of the decade. Data centers are the engines of this digital economy. They use about 3% of the world's electricity. In Virginia alone, data centers are about 20% of the electricity consumption. In Virginia, that's principally because of the concentration in Loudoun County and the Ashburn area. All of the major data center companies, all of the major component companies are committed to sustainability with goals over the next few years to reduce and eliminate their carbon footprint. And you heard recently Dominion's announcement of a 2.6 gigawatt offshore wind program just off the Atlantic, off of Virginia Beach, which will provide about 2% of the power that Dominion will have through sustainable resources. Data centers are getting taller, they're getting more efficient. We'll see that in White Oak Technology Park in Henrico, as well as in other parts of the country and certainly throughout the world as land is scarce and figured out that going vertical is an essential. Lots of consolidation in the data center industry. These are some big names, and you'll see that they've been eaten up by various either REITs or other data center organizations, in particular QTS, which has data center facilities in Henrico as well as throughout North America, was purchased last year by Blackstone. That's significant because they're leaving the QTS management intact. Chad Williams and his team, who are just excellent partners to work with. But Blackstone brings significant capital because they are the world's largest owner of commercial real estate. Greg talked about the subsea cables. Here's a map showing all of them. These date back to the late 19th century when we first started using telephones. So there's a pretty substantial cable infrastructure, but the vast majority of the value has been created in the last 5 to 7 years with over 107 new cables, about $14 billion and investment another $8 billion slated over the next couple of years. Well, we all think about 5G, 6G data on our phones, Wi-Fi, all of that. The vast majority of data, 99.7% of data, even more than the old ivory soap percentage, 99.7% of data travels on subsea cables. And that's how data moves all around the world, about $10 trillion a day in financial transactions. And you can see at the bottom of the slide, there's just under 500 cables worldwide and a little bit over 1,200 cable landing stations. Our cable landing station, of course, is at Virginia Beach. I know that you'll hear from our colleagues there at future webinars. They've just invested in an additional cable landing station, so there will be a second one. Virginia Beach and the RVA757 corridor was really a strange beneficiary of a couple of things, but the main one was Hurricane Sandy, because when Hurricane Sandy hit the Northeast about 10, 12 years ago, that completely shut down connectivity, internet connectivity to Europe. And so the industry wanted redundancy and wanted to modernize that. And that's why the undersea cables are now coming through Virginia Beach. And Henrico is the beneficiary of that because of the infrastructure that we have at the White Oak Technology Park through QTS, as well as being halfway between Ashburn and Loudoun and the beach. It's another map just showing the cables, the Do Not cable, which was built by Google, that connects to France, the Murray cable to Spain, a couple of the Brusa cable with a couple of extensions that connect to South America, and then SAEX1, or the South African Express 1, which is under construction, that will connect from Virginia Beach to Cape Town. Your first point of connection to these is at the QTS NAP in Eastern Henrico. We have a short video that I'll show here in a few minutes that'll give you a better sense of the power of these cables. We don't have it on the slide, but another cable that's in the planning is what's called the Confluence cable that will run out in the Atlantic, but it will be parallel to the Atlantic coast, connecting New York to Miami. So instead of trying to have domestic connectivity along the 95 corridor, along the Route 1 corridor, as we do with most of our terrestrial fiber network, it will actually be domestic connectivity out in the Atlantic. So, and that will also connect to Virginia Beach and then ultimately to QTS. 5 years ago, no East Coast internet traffic came through Henrico. No East Coast internet traffic came through Virginia Beach. Today, that's 18% and growing. And you can see at the zoomed in map, the power of these cables and what that connectivity is doing in connecting us to South America, to Europe, to Africa, and then ultimately on to Asia. Later this year, we'll have the formal announcement of the DKIC's Richmond Internet Exchange. For those of you that may have seen, there was a story last week in the business section of the Richmond Times-Dispatch. It was a pretty good story. It was nowhere near as good as when Greg Gilligan was writing for the Times-Dispatch, but it was a decent story. They do the best they can with what they've got. But they actually did a great story about Pixel Factory Data Center and the DKIC's exchange. So I recommend that to you to take a look at that, and you'll see. I think Chris Suarez, the reporter, did a very good job of talking about the value proposition there. And we mentioned this in our video, but essentially what's happening with the Internet Exchange is that it is providing direct, neutral connectivity for Henrico to the rest of the world. And that neutral connectivity is so critical, because what that means is that we're not relying on a particular provider. We're not relying on a particular owner of a cable. We are connected and it is totally neutral. The way to think about this, best way to think about this is imagine if you had an on-ramp from your driveway right onto 95. This is the DKIC's exchange, both a worldwide exchange as well as through the United States. There are 5 internet exchanges in the US: Phoenix, Dallas, Chicago, New York, and Richmond. It's actually in 3 places, one on Parham Road, one on QTS, and then one on Pixel Factory, which you may have read about last week. That makes the Richmond exchange. For those of you that are from the Richmond area, I would just ask you this question: when have you heard a conversation where Richmond comes up with cities like New York, Chicago, Dallas, and Phoenix? This is just how important this is. We're now on the map with all cities that have NFL teams And we're going to see some real benefit from having this internet exchange. Speed is critical. In the industry, they talk about latency, which is the opposite of speed. You want speed, you don't want latency, but this just gives you a sense of the importance of speed. From Henrico, from the QTS NAP to Ashburn, the internet capital of the world, is about 3.8 milliseconds, or just under 4 thousandths of a second. To the beach, it's just under 3 milliseconds. To Sao Paulo, Brazil, and back, and I should mention these times are all round trip to the place and back, is just over 1/10 of a second. So in the time it takes you to blink your eye, you can transmit your data back and forth from Henrico, from the QTS Richmond NAP to Spain. I'm now going to play a short video that hopefully shows you well the value proposition of what we're talking about today.
This is a global journey, but you won't need your passport. In fact, you'll never leave your chair. But we'll go to all corners of the world in fractions of a second, and we'll start in Henrico, Virginia. Have your attention? Good, because this is big. It's about reach, data speeds, and business opportunity, and what our region's internet infrastructure can do to revolutionize business and supercharge your digital transformation. This is the business world of today. Thanks to the integration with DKIX, the world's leading provider of interconnection services, Henrico and its business community is in the same conversation with New York, Chicago, Dallas, and Phoenix as part of the largest interconnection ecosystem in North America. With DKIX, in 1/3 of a second, the time of a single blink, your data can go to Spain and back. In 2 milliseconds, 2 normal flashes of a camera send your data to 80% of the US population. For area businesses, this means heightened visibility on an international stage and a premier global data hub right in their backyard. The world gets closer because data can now go farther and faster. We're talking unrestricted data communications with business epicenters and emerging markets worldwide in milliseconds. And it's all made possible by leveraging Henrico's existing subsea cable connections located at the QTS Richmond Network Access Point, NAP. Here you can gain access to Dunant, which extends to France and offers a record-breaking 250 terabits per second capacity. That's fast enough to transmit the entire digitized Library of Congress 3 times every second. In addition, tap into Maria, Brusa, and SAE-X1, which extend to Puerto Rico, Brazil, Spain, and South Africa. And it gets better, because this is the business world of tomorrow. Through integration of the QTS Richmond NAP and the DKIX exchange, businesses will have instantaneous access to more than 2,300 network operators and 500 data centers across the globe. And that list is growing. Most impressively, this integration with DKIX is data center neutral and carrier neutral, but only in Henrico. We are offering open access to a data Autobahn, where you can drive your business towards success. We hope you enjoyed this international expedition. Let's talk more.
That video is on our website, henrico.com, so please share it as you see fit. We want to tell the world about this. So I'll turn from the macro overview to a more specific overview that is going to speak directly to the White Oak Technology Park and the investments that QTS, Meta/Facebook, and others have made in our technology park, which are really ground zero for what's happening with the digital infrastructure. So here's just a map of the tech park. It's about 2,400 acres. A very quick history on the tech park. In 1942, all of this land was taken from the families that live there by the government. They were going to, they made a decoy airport because there was fear that the old bird field would be bombed by the Nazis. The Nazis didn't bomb the area, and in the late 1940s, the property was turned over to the Commonwealth of Virginia. They considered for about 50 years what to do with it, and ultimately decided to give it to the Henrico Industrial Development Authority, which is the precursor to the EDA, the old IDA. And Henrico put $44 million in 1994 in roads, water, and sewer work into building the technology park. Where the QTS symbol is on there, that was the Kumanda semiconductor plant that Greg mentioned before. And as you know, when you build semiconductor plants, you have substantial infrastructure. And so this has positioned us well from a water, sewer, and fiber standpoint for, as well as electric power for data center development, which also requires pretty substantial investments in those utilities. In the White Oak Technology Park, we've got several businesses. I'm going to focus on the two key ones, two big ones. Today, just under 900 employees, about 6 million square feet under roof, not including the development that's underway today, and it generates about $12 million a year in direct tax revenue to Henrico. Starting with our friends at Facebook/Meta, and I see Kelly McCall is on the call today. Kelly went from Chamber RVA over to the Facebook team, and it's really awesome to be able to work with Kelly in a different capacity. We are particularly grateful to them for shaping their building like an H, which Henrico takes full credit for. We're thankful for that. So what you're looking at here is, and I'm going to show you an aerial here in just a minute. What's in the foreground of this picture is buildings 4 and 5 that are currently under construction. These will be finished next year. And then at the very top of the page, you'll see this in an upcoming slide also, is buildings 1, 2, and 3 that were built and opened last year in 2020, 2021. This is all part of Facebook's 2 million square foot data center campus at the White Oak Technology Park. You remember when you saw the video and we were talking about the speed and the importance of the connectivity. Statistic we heard was that 90% of Facebook users live outside of the United States. So it's no coincidence that they located their facility right next to the fastest internet connectivity across the Atlantic there at White Oak Technology Park. Quick word on QTS, and then I'll show you the video. The top right, that's the old semiconductor plant that, as Greg mentioned, has been converted to the 4th largest data center in the world. Last week, some of our key staff were invited to a topping out ceremony as the steel is up on DC1, which is part of the QTS expansion. And then I'll play a video here. I won't play the whole thing for the sake of time, but you can see drone video footage of the QTS campus. Hopefully you can see the little fist there, but on the left-hand side of the page, this is the former semiconductor plant. This is the current QTS data center. There is work underway there as they continue to outfit that for additional data center space within the existing 1.3 million square foot complex that they have there. As we head to the east, you'll see this is what QTS calls DC1. This is their next data hall or data center building that's under construction. That's about 200,000 square feet. I'm narrating only because Greg Gillian said he would sing during this portion, but I can't hear it, Greg. So I'm just going to narrate this. You definitely don't want me to sing, not if you want to hold your audience. So just let this play for just a bit. And then as we turn the corner, you'll see Facebook at the top of the page.
Anthony, I won't sing, but I will say this is just the first phase of this expansion, correct?
Just the first phase of the expansion. It's about a 1.5 million square foot expansion. So you'll see 5 buildings just like this one right next to it, and that tree line that's at the right-hand side. At the very top of the page here, this is QTS buildings 1, 2, and 3 that came online in the last year. And then at the very top of the page up there is the Facebook's additional buildings that are under construction. As I mentioned, we're now turning to the west, and where you can see the tree line there right at the top of the page, that's where QTS will be building additional data centers as they execute on their master plan. As I mentioned, their partner right here, Meta, is here with their campus also at White Oak Technology Park. There'll be further expansions by QTS. They just purchased additional land from us just a few months ago on the other side of the technology park. November 8th, please mark your calendars. This will be the NAP Summit 2.0. We had the first one at QTS back in 2019. The pandemic held us from having a second one. It's November 8th, 2022 at the Short Pump Hilton. It's open to the public. Dr. Vince Cerf will be there speaking. He is one of the founders of the internet, one of the original brains that put together the internet that changed the world forever. He'll be giving a keynote address. There's also a number of really phenomenal panelists that will be speaking from across the world that will be talking about the importance of digital infrastructure and just what this means, not just for the data center world, not just for the technology world, but for all businesses, because everybody is moving data. Whether you're a small business or the largest business in the world, everybody is moving data, and this is meaningful for anybody who's in the business world. It'll be from around 9 to 4 on Tuesday, November 8th. Please go on our website or the IEIC website, and you can register to participate. And it is free of charge. And with that, Greg and team, that's my presentation. Happy to try to answer any questions.
Anthony, thanks so much, and thanks for providing those videos. The second one, the aerial drone shots, were just fascinating to see the massive size of these data centers and what's planned for out there. Give me a sense, if you can, before we open it up for questions, what does Henrico's internet infrastructure mean for non-technology focused businesses throughout the region?
Yeah, we talk a lot about data centers and latencies and latency and milliseconds and all of that. But, I showed one of the slides there that there's $10 trillion a day in financial transactions worldwide. But anybody who's moving data wants to be able to move it quickly, wants to be able to move it safely. And that's really the power in what's happening with this. And particularly if your business does any business across the Atlantic, whether it's Europe, Africa, or South America, you're not going to get faster connectivity than what you'll have through the QTS NAP, going through those undersea cables. And so this is really a whole lot more than just talking about the internet infrastructure and the data centers, which are awesome. They're great taxpayers. They're great community partners. This is really about how all businesses can do business a whole lot faster and a whole lot more effectively with this technology at their fingertips.
You mentioned Kelly McCall. I know you're on the call, and I'm going to put you on the spot for just a second here, if you can. Can you give us an update on where the second phase of the Meta/Facebook data center is? Is that possible?
Sure, Greg. Yeah, we were hoping to open it the first phase in November. I think we've had some supply chain issues that might push it back to the start of the new year. But that's the latest that I've heard.
Good, thank you. Appreciate that update. And I'm glad you're on board out there. We appreciate that. So Anthony, if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand or send a note to the chat phone so we can ask Anthony some additional questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Hey, Greg, this is John Easter with Chamber RVA. I can't figure out how to raise my hand on this, and I'm too slow a typist. So if I can, let me just ask Anthony this question. Anthony, your promotional video that you showed talked about, obviously you're trying to promote economic development for Henrico. So you're talking about the advantages of being right there. I'm just curious then, how much advantage is there for both for businesses and for data companies in being like right next door versus, in the region versus beyond the region? And when I say the region, you could either be talking about the Richmond area or the whole 757 extended area. But, how much of an advantage does this really give both for data companies, but also for individual businesses?
Yeah, I think, John, it depends on what's an acceptable latency for that particular business. So for a lot of businesses, being in the region or near the region, and our partners in terrestrial fiber do a really good job of helping us move things around just as quickly as possible. I will tell you that my colleague, Twyla Powell, who manages our data center projects, worked a data center project, a company that is in Loudoun and that was interested in moving to the Richmond area. And the latency of 3.7 milliseconds was too slow for them. So it really depends on the amount of data that folks are moving and where that data needs to go. But I think it's safe to say, for the most part, the closer you are to the infrastructure, the faster it's going to be. And having those opportunities, not just in Henrico, but throughout our region, is really going to make us a differentiator.
Good. Anthony, we have a question from Michael Marks from the Richmond Times-Dispatch, a former colleague, who is asking, are there any semiconductor chip manufacturers nibbling at sites in the White Oak area?
I will tell you, Michael Martz gets the award for tenacity, because he asked me that question about 3 times a week. The answer is yes. We are definitely in the game for semiconductor prospects in Henrico, as is my colleagues in other parts of the region. We definitely have some interest in White Oak because of the substantial infrastructure that's there, the water, sewer, electric, fiber infrastructure that's there. We think we've got a really strong value proposition when it comes to semiconductors. And I think it's really important with respect to those is to understand the whole ecosystem, that what you saw happen in Columbus, Ohio with Intel, which is a $20 billion investment, could be a whole lot more than that. You know, they have 1,000 acres of flat land with full utilities. We don't have a site that big in Henrico with those utilities, but there's certainly a lot of other aspects of the ecosystem where we could definitely be competitive. And the nice thing about both data centers and semiconductor projects is even a small data center project, even a small semiconductor project, that can be billions of dollars.
Anthony, we've got a question from Scott Sutton, and this is actually a good one. He's curious about security and the subsea cables. He says he assumed we have some massive protections for all these cables themselves. Can you answer that? And then how many people work or will work in and around the White Oak Technology Park?
Yeah, I'll answer the second one first. And I don't know if my colleague Vinay is, because Vinay has a great answer with respect to security. And if you're comfortable, Vinay, maybe you could take that. With respect to the jobs, there's a couple ways to look at that. First off, I mentioned at White Oak today, there's about 1,000 people that work for the companies that are there. But what everybody needs to keep in mind is that when you look at the construction that Meta has, when you look at the construction that QTS has, Meta has had folks on site since 2017, as many as 1,300 to 1,500 people on site for the last 5 years. They're going to be you heard Kelly say they'll continue to be under construction until January. QTS is in the midst of their expansion. That's going to be a multi-year expansion. And so we've got hundreds of tradespeople on site that by the time Facebook completes and rolls into the expansion that QTS has underway, you'll have hundreds, over 1,000 people that have worked there from a trade standpoint for over a decade. So there's a substantial economic and jobs impact beyond just the folks that work there full time. It's no secret that data centers don't have a lot of people from a maintenance standpoint. They are high-tech facilities. The Meta complex at full build out will have approximately 200 people working there. QTS is considerably smaller from a staffing complement. So it's really important that we look at the big picture when it comes to the economic impact of the data centers, the tax revenues that they generate, and the impact that they have with the construction community. Vinay, can you address the security?
Anthony, before Vinay does that, can you talk about, part of the thing is the ripple effect. The companies want to be close to QTS and other data companies. They don't necessarily have to be at White Oak, but they're throughout the Richmond region or throughout the I-64 corridor. Yeah,
thank you for the softball right over the plate there, Greg. I mean, just as an example, in the last couple of years, Anord Mardix, which is a supplier to the data center industry, has expanded in Henrico, as has a company called PDI, which was purchased by Eaton, which is one of the largest electrical companies in the world, PDI Eaton, has also expanded. Neither of those is at the tech park, but they're both in Eastern Henrico, and they're absolutely part of the data center family in terms of supplying the industry. There's going to be more and more of that as it grows.
And Vinay, can you help us with the security question?
Yeah, Greg, happy to do that. Hello, everyone. And I think, Anthony, to your last point, I think that data center ecosystem, you know, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to economic growth, it's extremely important to look at it beyond the construction, beyond the data center operational elements, because at the end of the day, you know, you've got a lot that's happening inside of the data center from the perspective of cabinets, from the perspective of servers, the compute that's happening, and then you have fiber optic cables. So from an ecosystem perspective, you have systems integrators, you have network integrators, you have manufacturers of cabinets and servers, and gradually over time, you see them gravitate where this ecosystem develops. That's what has happened over the years and decades in the Northern Virginia market as an example. So I think from a job growth, from an economic impact perspective, it's very important to have that overall data center ecosystem view. When it comes to security of the subsea cables, I mean, just by nature of these cables, you know, these are laid across international waters, traversing thousands of kilometers on the ocean bed. And of course, when you have international waters traverse for these subsea cables, it gets pretty complex when it comes to, you know, in terms of responsibilities and who handles what when it comes to maintenance and the sort. From a physical security perspective, you know, someone has to have a very serious malicious intent to go and damage a cable in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and have means to get there, and so on and so forth. But from an industry standpoint, usually the way the internet works, and Anthony was referring to Windsurf, who was the keynote speaker on November the 8th, by default, you know, all the networks are diverse in terms of how capacity is sourced from multiple networks. So if one route goes down, your traffic is automatically routed across another route. So yes, there is a risk, but at the same time, given the nature of the internet, the way it works, there is a inherent self-healing component of the network that's built into the TCP/IP protocol, which is what Windsurf invented over 50 years ago, which is the basis of how the internet works.
Vinay, thanks so much. And how's the weather there in Singapore today? Or tonight, I guess, in your world?
Yeah, it's night. I mean, I literally landed like 2 hours ago and been in my hotel room since then. So I'll find out more tomorrow.
Good. Thanks. Appreciate it. So, you know, John Martin, who's the CEO of RVA757 Connects, just asked, wanting to know, Vinay, what are you learning in Singapore at this International Digital Infrastructure Conference? What's the latest buzz about the global internet hubs?
So I think there's an ongoing theme of diversification when it comes to internet hubs, when it comes to the growth. The growth is happening across the board when we look at whether it's on the subsea side, whether it's on the data center subsector of digital infrastructure. But with that said, at the same time, geographically as well, there's tremendous growth happening in the Nordics. There's tremendous growth happening in new markets in the Asian region as well. And when it comes to global internet hubs, you know, our region, whether it's Virginia Beach, whether it's Henrico, you know, the combination thereof is definitely on the global connectivity map. From a global internet hub perspective, at the end of the day, that's where the industry is gravitating towards. And we have kind of, you know, over our last couple of sessions, Greg, we have kind of seen how that ecosystem is developing. So so this is the largest subsea conference in the world here in Singapore every year. And there is a big emphasis on diversification. There's big emphasis on, you know, having new developed ecosystems around the world, for which Henrico is a poster child at this point in time.
Great, thank you, Vinay. Appreciate that. We have another question, and I'm not sure whether Anthony, you can address this, but what is the community engagement strategy to raise awareness and gain interest among the general public and business owners as it pertains to workforce development, entrepreneurship positions and opportunities, and business process transformation?
Well, I would just say that, it's right in scripture where two or more are gathered. I will talk about Henrico's digital infrastructure. So happy to go anywhere and talk about this subject. I think that our November 8th event is really a key event. As I mentioned, that's open to the public and really telling the story from some of the best experts in the world as to just how important this is. There's only so much from a storytelling standpoint that Henrico can do, and we're going to continue to do that. And then, I think that too, I might just flip that question back to you guys, John and Greg and Laura, because I know you've got a whole community engagement strategy built into the Go Virginia process that you guys are working on. That's going to be for the entire mega region that I think will really help tell the story.
John, do you want to address that? John Martin?
Sure. Thanks, Anthony, and thank you for all your thoughtful comments this morning. That's really the big aha for us is when we started to learn about the opportunity to become a global internet hub. We realized that when we were sharing the story, the light bulbs would go off, especially among senior business leaders, and said, gosh, where has this story been? We've got to tell this. We've got to promote more of what's going on right here and now and where we're headed. So that's what we feel like we need to do as part of the Global Internet Hub strategic plan. And that's why we created such a large steering committee, some 62 leaders that are working together over 6 meetings to come up with a strategic plan. And through the process of developing that plan, we are going to spread the word and really build the anticipation of the final strategy that we come up with for our mega region, for Hampton Roads and Richmond working together to really accelerate the ascendancy of our mega region into the global internet hub status. So it will happen on its own, but we're just really impatient in Richmond and Hampton Roads. We want it to happen now or faster. And so part of that is building awareness among various stakeholder groups of just the incredible assets we have today and then what's planned for tomorrow. And so our whole strategic planning process includes communication outreach to our stakeholders. So stay tuned on that.
And John, to your point, this is one of those outreaches.
That's
Doing
right.
these innovation spotlights on digital assets is one of those ways of doing that.
And the outreach is going to include about workforce development tie-ins and entrepreneurial tie-ins and really the whole gamut of the impact of what would happen accelerating our ascendancy to global internet hub status.
Yeah, I think, John, just to kind of add to that, right? I think we've discussed this before. One is to kind of give that holistic view when it comes to the infrastructure across the entire mega region. And then when it comes to the impact of that, in terms of cross-industry impact, as Anthony was saying, not just from a technology sector perspective, but, for the local businesses, for the communities, for the schools, for the colleges, what those impacts are. And of course, that has to be an iterative, ongoing process where you have these outreach, where you have these webinars, where you have a lot of in-person meetings as well. And I think I see that as an ongoing effort. To Greg's point, obviously that has commenced, and this webinar is one of those many efforts underway. But I think the way I look at it is having that cross-industry messaging, and then having from an infrastructure perspective, that holistic view across the mega region.
That's right.
Anthony, we have a question from Milan Tron. And Milan, I wanted to know about data center project utilization services and small business suppliers. She knows that they vary center by center. In the RVA757 mega region, what are some of the types of sourcing that are most important? And is QTS putting these utilizations and practices as just construction? Where does QTS announce some of these small business utilization needs? I'm not sure, Anthony, you can answer that, but maybe you can.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, and Milan, I mean, we're talking with all of our companies. We have a a really good program of encouraging participation with our SWAM businesses, small women and minority owned businesses. And really, one of the intentional changes we made recently was to start those conversations at the front end, because by the time an expansion is announced, the decision's been made, contractors have been lined up. So trying to help to do what we can. One of the things that QTS has mentioned in particular, not so much from a small business standpoint necessarily, but over half of the construction workers for their expansion site will be union construction workers. Meta also has a similar commitment to that end to small women and minority owned businesses. So we're fully engaged with the data center community as well as all of our businesses to try to support SWAM businesses from the beginning of the process.
Good. Is there any last minute questions from anybody out there in the audience who'd like to ask? Okay, hearing none. Anthony, thank you very much again for all your help with this today and the program and pitch hitting there, to be able to help us with the last minute departure from the QTS speaker. Really do appreciate it. Thank you for your insight and your thoughtful comments. Let me just briefly let everybody know what's happening next. As you know, you can get a recorded link to this session on our website. It should be up in about a week or so. And then also a reminder that you can learn more about the I-64 Innovation Corridor becoming the world's next global internet hub by checking out our website. Again, it's globalinternethub.org. Next month, it's hard to say, October is almost right around the corner here. We are having, along with Chamber RVA and the Hampton Roads Chamber, we are conducting an interregional 2-day bus tour of the various assets throughout the two regions so that leaders can see what's happening. If you're interested in the program, it's October the 13th and 14th with an overnight in Williamsburg on the 13th. Please let us know. There'll be information on our website as well. And next month, October the 4th, on Tuesday, October 4th from noon to 1 o'clock, we will hold our next Innovation Spotlight, which will be on the regional fiber ring down in Hampton Roads that's under construction that is supposed to bring faster internet service to that particular region. So mark your calendars for next month, 4 weeks from today, on Tuesday, October the 4th at noon. We'll be sending out some information about that coming up soon. Again, we appreciate everyone being on this program today, and any way you can help us would be great. Follow us by, attending our innovation spotlights. Let other people know, and let people know about our database. Sign up for our email newsletters and our email alerts. Suggest topics for the next innovation spotlights. Invite us to a business meeting or so that we can talk about what's happening in the mega region. Again, thank you for everyone for attending today. Thank you. Kudos to Anthony for really picking up the ball and running with it today. The show must go on, and it did go on, and we appreciate that, Anthony. Thank you very much. Thank everyone for attending. Remember, our next Innovation Spotlight is on Tuesday, October the 4th. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you again.